20 doctors take turns on intense shifts, but none can stop the decline of the hospitalized tycoon. Every test fails, every treatment collapses, and the millionaire's life seems to slip away with every passing minute. But in the silent corridors, a 7-year-old girl, the cleaning lady's daughter, sees what the experts cannot see, and she does the impossible. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. The machines monitoring Maxwell Max Reynolds' vitals beeped in a steady, ominous rhythm inside the luxury private suite of Boston General's VIP wing. 20 of the nation's top specialists had cycled through this room in the past 3 weeks, each one leaving with the same puzzled expression. The 56-year-old tech titan and founder of Reynolds Quantum, the revolutionary quantum computing company, on the verge of announcing a historic $87 billion merger with European giant Tech Fusion, was deteriorating before their eyes, and no one could explain why. "I want another toxicology panel," Dr. Westfield, the hospital's director, ordered. The chief neurologist shook his head. "We've run everything twice. Blood work, spinal fluid, tissue samples. There's nothing showing up in conventional tests. Whatever this is, it's not in our standard protocols." Max stirred weakly on the hospital bed. Once commanding and robust, with his signature salt and pepper beard and penetrating eyes that had graced the covers of Forbes and Time, he now appeared diminished, his skin sallow, his breathing labored. The merger announcement was just 2 weeks away, and rumors of his mysterious illness had already sent Reynolds' quantum stock tumbling. In the hallway outside, Sarah Mitchell pushed her cleaning cart quietly, head down, ID badge displayed prominently on her uniform. At 34, her face carried the quiet determination of someone who had shouldered too much responsibility, too young. 8 years earlier, she had been Sarah Mitchell, promising chemistry major on a full scholarship at MIT, just 3 semesters away from graduation. Then her parents' unexpected accident left her responsible for her 3 younger siblings, and education became a luxury she could no longer afford. Now she worked night shifts at Boston General, making ends meet with just enough left over for the small apartment she shared with her 7-year-old daughter, Emily. The hospital's night shift premium made the difference between scraping by and breathing room in her budget, even if it meant Emily sometimes had to accompany her when babysitters fell through. "Stay in the cart and keep quiet," Sarah whispered to Emily, who sat hidden behind supply bottles in the cleaning cart, a well-worn notebook clutched in her small hands. "Just tonight, okay? Mrs. Peters called in sick and I couldn't find anyone else." Emily nodded solemnly, her serious brown eyes, so like Sarah's own, peering over the edge of the cart. Unlike other children who might fidget or complain, Emily had developed a remarkable patience for these occasional midnight adventures. She'd learned to make herself nearly invisible, observing everything with the same scientific curiosity Sarah had cultivated in her from the earliest age. Their small apartment might lack luxuries, but it overflowed with improvised science projects. Where other mothers might have taught baking, Sarah had taught chemical reactions, vinegar volcanoes, homemade indicators that changed colors, crystal growing experiments on kitchen strings. Science had been their language of love, their special connection. Sarah methodically cleaned the hallway, keeping one eye on her daughter as she approached the nurse's station. The night head nurse, Diane, glanced up. "VIP room needs a quick clean." Apparently the big tech guy had some visitors earlier who left crumbs everywhere. "Rich people, I swear," Sarah nodded. "I'll get it right away." "Security's making rounds in 10 minutes, Diane added, not unkindly. "Keep your little shadow out of sight, yeah? I didn't see anything, but Peterson is on duty tonight and he's by the book." Sarah's cheeks flushed. She'd thought they were being discreet. "Thanks, Diane, I appreciate it. We all do what we have to," the nurse replied with a knowing look. "Just be careful." Sarah wheeled her cart toward the VIP suite, waiting until the attending physician left before entering. Inside, the room seemed less like a hospital space and more like a luxury hotel. Custom furnishings, ambient lighting, and state-of-the-art medical equipment seamlessly integrated into the decor. Maxwell Reynolds was asleep, his breathing shallow. The monitors blinked and whirred. For a moment, Sarah felt the vast gulf between their lives. His, built on brilliance, rewarded and recognized. Hers, with the same potential perhaps, but derailed by circumstance. She quickly pushed the thought away and began efficiently wiping surfaces, emptying small trash bins. Emily remained hidden but alert, watching through a small gap in the supplies. Her mother had taught her that observation was the foundation of all science. As Sarah worked, Emily noticed a jar of cream on the nightstand, expensive-looking with a subtle embossed logo. Beside it lay a handwritten card, "For the discomfort. Use liberally, old friend. Derek." The sweet phone rang suddenly, startling them both. Sarah froze mid-motion, but the sound didn't wake Reynolds. After 3 rings, it went silent. "All done in here," Sarah whispered, motioning for Emily to stay hidden as she pushed the cart back into the hallway. As they moved toward the utility closet, Mrs. Jenkins, the night supervisor, rounded the corner. A thin woman with permanently pursed lips and steel-rimmed glasses, she carried her clipboard like a weapon. "Mitchell," she said sharply, eyeing the cart with suspicion. "You've been in the VIP suite for quite some time." "Just being thorough, Mrs. Jenkins," Sarah replied evenly. "Dr. Westfield mentioned the importance of extra sanitization for Mr. Reynolds." Jenkins made a note on her clipboard. "You've been assigned here 3 months now, correct?" "Yes, ma'am. There have been reports of you taking extended breaks or disappearing from your assigned section." Sarah's throat tightened. "I assure you I complete all my duties on schedule." "See that you do. This hospital maintains strict protocols, especially around high-profile patients. Remember, you are here to clean, not to involve yourself in patient matters." As Jenkins walked away, Emily's small hand found Sarah's, squeezing it reassuringly. Sarah exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of precarity pressing down. One complaint, one mistake, could cost her this job. The night premium that kept their electricity on and food in their refrigerator. In the utility closet, Emily finally emerged from the cart, stretching her legs. "The man in the big room looks really sick, Mommy," she whispered. "He is," Sarah replied softly. "The doctors are trying to help him." "There was a funny smell in there," Emily said, wrinkling her nose. "Like the pennies you used in our color-changing experiment." Sarah paused, registering her daughter's comment. Emily had always had a remarkable sense of smell, noticing subtle changes that even Sarah missed. It was part of what made their home experiments so successful. "Metallic?" Sarah asked, her scientific mind suddenly alert. Emily nodded. "From that jar on his table. The fancy one with the swirly top?" Sarah frowned slightly, filing the observation away. It was probably nothing. Expensive skincare often contained trace minerals or metals for therapeutic purposes. Still, something about Emily's description nagged at her. "Ready to go back in hiding. We have 3 more hours until dawn," Sarah said, helping Emily back into her spot in the cart. "Can I write in my notebook?" Emily asked, already pulling out a pencil. Like her mother, she developed the habit of recording observations, in her case, with a combination of careful 7-year-old handwriting and detailed drawings. "Of course, scientist," Sarah smiled, kissing the top of her head. "Just stay hidden." As they exited the closet, neither noticed the elegant man in an Italian suit who stood watching from the far end of the corridor. Derek Caldwell, tech investor and longtime rival of Maxwell Reynolds, observed the cleaning lady and caught a brief glimpse of small fingers gripping the edge of the cart. His expression remained pleasant, but his eyes were calculating as he turned and walked toward the VIP suite, pulling a small vial from his pocket. 2 nights later, Sarah found herself cleaning the same hallway, this time legitimately alone. Emily was safely at home with Mrs. Perez from downstairs watching her. The VIP wing had been unusually busy, with doctors coming and going at all hours, their faces increasingly concerned. Through fragments of overheard conversations, Sarah gathered that Maxwell Reynolds was experiencing new symptoms: hair loss, numbness in his extremities, and progressive muscle weakness. "His labs are all over the place," she heard Dr. Carter, the youngest specialist on the team, tell a colleague. "And there's nothing in his history that explains it. No exposure to industrial chemicals, no unusual travel, nothing." Sarah worked methodically, keeping her head down as she had trained herself to do. The invisible were rarely questioned. The silent rarely bothered. It was a survival strategy she'd perfected over years of service work. Be efficient, be unremarkable, be forgotten. When the hall cleared momentarily, she slipped into the supply room where the cleaning chemicals were stored. Taking inventory was part of her job, but today she lingered longer, examining the bottles of industrial cleansers. Some contained warnings about heavy metals and toxic compounds. Her mind flickered back to Emily's observation about the metallic smell. Something about it had been needling her since that night. The door swung open abruptly, and Sarah nearly dropped the bottle she was holding. "Taking a break, Mitchell." Mrs. Jenkins stood in the doorway, clipboard at the ready. "Just restocking my cart," Sarah replied, placing the cleaning solution back on the shelf. "See that you hurry. Mr. Reynolds has a visitor, and his room will need attention afterward." Jenkins' tone made it clear this wasn't a request. Sarah nodded and quickly gathered her supplies, feeling Jenkins' eyes on her back. The supervisor had been increasingly watchful lately, making notes and appearing unexpectedly around corners. Sarah couldn't afford to give her any reason for complaint. As she wheeled her cart back into the hallway, she saw a tall, distinguished-looking man exit Reynolds' suite. Derek Caldwell. She recognized him from technology news segments. Once Reynolds' fiercest competitor, now reportedly a close ally following a high-profile reconciliation that had made business headlines last year. Caldwell nodded politely as he passed her, his smile charismatic, but his eyes never quite meeting hers. In his wake, she caught a faint trace of expensive cologne mingled with something else, a subtle metallic tang that reminded her instantly of Emily's description. Inside Reynolds' room, the tech magnate appeared to be sleeping fitfully. Sarah noticed a fresh jar of cream on the nightstand, the same brand as before but newly opened. Beside it lay an elegant card with the same handwriting, another batch stronger this time. "For the pain, Derek." As Sarah carefully wiped down surfaces, she noticed Reynolds' hands. The nails had a yellowish tinge, and the skin around his gums appeared unusually pale when he breathed through slightly parted lips. These symptoms, alongside what she had overheard in the hallway, triggered a connection in her mind, a distant memory from a toxicology lecture she'd attended years ago. Heavy metal poisoning. The professor had shown slides of patients with similar presentations: pallid gums, discolored nails, neurological symptoms, hair loss. It had been a fascinating lecture, one she'd taken detailed notes on. Sarah's heart rate quickened. It was absurd to even consider. She was a cleaning lady, not a doctor. These world-class specialists surely would have tested for heavy metals if that were a reasonable suspicion. And yet, many heavy metals didn't show up on standard toxicology panels. Some required specific tests that might not be included in routine screenings. The cream jar caught her eye again. With a quick glance at the door, Sarah leaned closer to it, cautiously sniffing. There it was, subtle but distinct, the metallic odor Emily had noticed. Acting on instinct, she took a clean tissue from her pocket and carefully swabbed the rim of the jar where a small amount of cream had been left behind, folding the tissue neatly and tucking it into her uniform pocket. Just then, the monitors around Reynolds began beeping more rapidly. His breathing grew labored. Sarah quickly pressed the call button and stepped back as a medical team rushed in. From the doorway she watched them work, her mind racing. Outside in the hallway, she spotted Caldwell standing by the nurse's station, ostensibly waiting for news. His expression was concerned, but something in his posture seemed oddly satisfied. "Excuse me, sir," a security guard approached him. "Are you family?" "As good as," Caldwell replied smoothly. "I'm Derek Caldwell, Maxwell's oldest friend. We've known each other since Stanford." The guard nodded respectfully. "Mr. Reynolds' condition has changed. The doctors are requesting all visitors clear the floor until further notice." "Of course," Caldwell agreed, handing the guard a business card. "Please have Dr. Westfield call me with any updates. Max and I have been through too much together for me to be kept in the dark now." As he turned to leave, his gaze briefly met Sarah's. Something in his expression shifted, a momentary calculation quickly masked by a polite nod. Sarah looked away instantly, busying herself with her cart, but her skin prickled with unease. That night, Sarah returned home to find Emily still awake. Sitting at their small kitchen table with homemade lab equipment, clear glasses filled with different colored liquids, strips of coffee filters arranged for separation experiments, and her ever-present notebook open to a page of careful observations. "Mommy, I made a new color indicator," Emily announced proudly, holding up a purple-stained strip of paper. It turns blue with soap and red with lemon juice. Sarah smiled, setting down her bag and kissing the top of her daughter's head. That's amazing, scientist. You've been busy. Mrs. Perez helped me cut the papers. She said I'm going to be a doctor someday. Emily's eyes shone with pride. Maybe you will, Sarah replied, thinking of the tissue in her pocket and the questions swirling in her mind. After putting Emily to bed, Sarah sat at the kitchen table, carefully removing the tissue sample. She had simple household chemicals. Nothing. Like a real laboratory, but years of creating educational experiments for Emily had given her a surprising array of tests she could perform at home, using vinegar, baking soda, and the same indicators Emily had been playing with. Sarah conducted a rudimentary test. The result wasn't definitive, but the color change suggested the presence of something that shouldn't be in a cosmetic cream. She needed more information, more tools. The next morning, after dropping Emily at school, Sarah visited the public library. In the science section, she pulled toxicology references and medical guides, looking for information on heavy metals and their symptoms. The parallels to Reynolds' condition were increasingly difficult to ignore. That evening, she prepared dinner while Emily sat at the table, drawing in her notebook. "What are you working on, sweetheart?" Sarah asked, stirring pasta sauce. "I'm drawing the sick man and the visitor," Emily replied, her crayon moving carefully across the page. "See? This is the man in the bed, and these are all the doctors. And this is the man who brings the jar with the penny smell." Sarah moved behind her daughter, looking down at the drawing. Emily had captured the scene with surprising accuracy. Reynolds in his hospital bed, surrounded by monitors, and a tall figure standing nearby with what appeared to be a jar in his hand. "When did you see the visitor, Em? You weren't with me last night." "The time before," Emily said, continuing to color, "when I was hiding in the cart. He came in while you were cleaning the bathroom. He put something in the jar and mixed it with a little stick. Then he saw me watching and smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile." She looked up at Sarah with earnest eyes. "It was a pretend smile, like when Tommy at school says he's sharing but really isn't." A chill ran through Sarah. "He saw you." Emily nodded. "Just my eyes, I think. I was hiding really good like you taught me." "He whispered something too." "What did he whisper?" Sarah asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "He said the sick man's brain was already breaking before he got sick, and that he wouldn't make it through the fusion even if he was healthy." Emily frowned, trying to recall the exact words. "What's a fusion, Mommy?" "Merger," Sarah corrected automatically, her mind racing. "It's a business thing." She stared at Emily's drawing, the implications settling like a weight in her stomach. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. If her suspicions were correct, if Reynolds was indeed being poisoned through the cream Caldwell brought him, what should she do? Who would believe a cleaning lady over a tech billionaire? The risk to her job, her reputation, her ability to provide for Emily was enormous, and yet a man was suffering, possibly dying. The knowledge sat like a stone in her chest, heavy with responsibility. The following evening, Sarah arrived at the hospital with a new sense of purpose and a small plastic bag tucked into her uniform pocket. Inside were basic materials for a more definitive test: coffee filters, cotton swabs, a small bottle of vinegar solution, and a homemade indicator created from red cabbage juice that Emily had helped prepare. Nothing suspicious to the untrained eye, just a mother bringing dinner remnants and a child's science project. "You're early." "Mitchell," Mrs. Jenkins commented as Sarah signed in, eyeing her with the now familiar suspicion. "Bus came ahead of schedule," Sarah replied evenly. "I thought I'd get a head start on the special cleaning protocols for Mr. Reynolds' room." Jenkins raised an eyebrow. "Indeed. Well, you should know there's been a change. The entire floor is on heightened security tonight. Mr. Reynolds experienced another serious episode this morning. Dr. Westfield has requested minimal personnel." "I understand," Sarah said, suppressing her concern. "I'll be especially careful not to disturb anything." "See that you are." "And Mitchell, I've noticed your breaks have been longer lately. Remember, this hospital runs on precision. Each person performing their assigned function. Nothing more, nothing less." The warning was clear. Sarah nodded and proceeded to the employee locker room, her mind working quickly. If security was tightened, her window for investigation would be narrower. She needed to be strategic. The VIP floor was unusually quiet when she arrived with her cleaning cart. Outside Reynolds' suite, a security guard sat checking IDs against a list. Sarah recognized him. James, a middle-aged man who usually worked the emergency department entrance. "Evening, James," she said casually. "Mrs. Jenkins said I'm still cleared for the nightly cleaning." James nodded, barely glancing at her badge. "Go ahead, Sarah, just keep it quick. Doctors are due back for rounds in 30 minutes. Inside, Reynolds's condition had visibly deteriorated since her last shift. His breathing was shallow, his skin waxy, and several more monitors had been added to the array around him. The jar of cream remained on the nightstand, now half empty. Sarah moved silently around the room, cleaning as expected while looking for an opportunity. When Reynolds stirred slightly, murmuring in his sleep, she froze. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. "Laura?" he whispered, clearly disoriented. "Is that you?" Sarah hesitated, then moved closer. "I'm Sarah, Mr. Reynolds. I'm just cleaning your room." He blinked slowly, his gaze sharpening slightly. "Water, please." Sarah carefully poured water from a pitcher into a cup and helped him take a small sip. As he leaned back against the pillows, his eyes settled on her face with surprising lucidity. "You're here every night," he said softly. "Always watching." Noticing things, Sarah's pulse quickened. "It's my job, sir." A weak smile touched his lips. "No, more than that." Scientific gaze, analytical. His words were slightly slurred, but his perception startled her. "You remind me of someone. Someone brilliant." Sarah didn't know how to respond, but Reynolds continued, his voice fading. "Derek thinks I'm not sharp enough anymore for the merger. Says quantum needs younger minds now." His eyes drifted closed again. Tiredness. "It's everywhere now." Within moments he had fallen back asleep. Sarah stood motionless, processing his words. They aligned too perfectly with what Emily had overheard. With a quick glance at the door, Sarah took her opportunity. She carefully swabbed a fresh sample of the cream using a clean cotton ball, then sealed it in one of the small plastic bags she'd brought. She worked quickly, checking the time, 20 minutes before the doctors would return. In the adjoining private bathroom, Sarah locked the door and set up her makeshift experiment. Using the supplies from her pocket, she prepared several testing strips and applied tiny amounts of the cream sample to each. As the chemical reactions took place, the indicator solutions changed color, some turning a distinctive greenish blue that, to her trained eye, strongly suggested the presence of certain heavy metals. It wasn't definitive proof, but it strengthened her suspicions enough that she felt a cold certainty settling in her stomach. The cream almost certainly contained toxic levels of a heavy metal, possibly thallium or a similar substance that was difficult to detect in standard tests but could cause the exact symptoms Reynolds was exhibiting. Sarah carefully documented her findings in a small notebook, similar to Emily's but with more precise observations. She photographed the test results with her old phone, then methodically cleaned up all evidence of her experiment. As she exited the bathroom, the door to the suite opened. Sarah's heart leapt into her throat, but it was only Dr. Ethan Carter, the youngest member of Reynolds's medical team. In his early 30s, with kind eyes behind stylish glasses, he was one of the few staff members who always acknowledged the cleaning crew with genuine courtesy. "Oh, excuse me," he said, seeming slightly startled to find anyone in the room. "I came back for my tablet." "No problem, doctor. I was just finishing up," Sarah replied, returning to her cart. Dr. Carter retrieved his tablet from beside the monitors but lingered, studying Reynolds with a troubled expression. "His latest blood work makes no sense," he murmured almost to himself. "It's like his system is fighting something we can't identify." Sarah hesitated, then spoke carefully. "Doctor, I hope you don't mind me asking, have you tested specifically for heavy metal poisoning?" Dr. Carter looked up, surprised. "We ran a basic metals panel in the initial workup. Nothing flagged." His brow furrowed. "Why do you ask?" "It's just—" Sarah struggled to find the right words. "My daughter noticed a metallic smell from his skincare products. And I used to study chemistry before." She trailed off, suddenly acutely aware of the vast professional gulf between them. "Before?" Dr. Carter prompted, his attention now fully on her. "Before I had to leave MIT family emergency, 3 semesters short of graduating," Sarah replied, feeling strangely vulnerable. admitting this part of herself she usually kept hidden. The symptoms remind me of what I learned about certain heavy metals, especially ones that might not show up on standard panels. Dr. Carter's expression shifted from surprise to thoughtful consideration. MIT chemistry program? That's not a common background for hospital custodial staff. Life takes unexpected turns, Sarah said simply. He nodded slowly. Yes, it does. He glanced back at Reynolds, then lowered his voice. What specific metals were you thinking of? Thallium would be my first guess. It matches the symptoms. Hair loss, peripheral neuropathy, gastrointestinal issues, nail changes, and it requires specialized testing to detect. Dr. Carter's eyes widened slightly. That's actually a very astute observation. He studied her with new interest. I'd considered arsenic, but the tests were negative. We haven't specifically screened for thallium. He seemed to make a decision. I'll order the test tomorrow morning, discreetly. Thank you, Sarah said, relief washing through her. I should be thanking you. Sometimes fresh eyes see what specialists miss. He hesitated. What's your name? Sarah Mitchell. Thank you, Sarah. I'll let you know what we find out. As Dr. Carter left the room, Sarah allowed herself a moment of hope, quickly extinguished when she turned to find Mrs. Jenkins standing in the doorway, her expression glacial. Mitchell. A word in the hallway, please. Sarah's stomach dropped as she followed her supervisor into the corridor. I couldn't help but overhear, Jenkins said, her voice dangerously low. You were discussing a patient's medical condition with a doctor? Offering opinions on diagnosis? You were overstepping your boundaries in the most flagrant manner possible, Jenkins cut her off. You are hired to clean rooms, not diagnose patients. This is exactly the sort of behavior I've been concerned about. Inappropriate involvement with patients, abandoning your assigned tasks, and now undermining the medical team's authority. I wasn't undermining anyone, Sarah protested, keeping her voice level despite her racing heart. Dr. Carter asked for my input. After you volunteered it, Jenkins countered. This is a written warning, Mitchell. One more incident of this nature, and I will have no choice but to recommend termination. She produced a form from her clipboard. Sign here to acknowledge. Sarah's hand trembled slightly as she signed the paper. The warning would go in her permanent file, a black mark that could affect future employment prospects if she lost this job. I need this job, Mrs. Jenkins, she said quietly. My daughter should be your motivation to perform your duties properly, nothing more, Jenkins finished for her. Consider yourself on probation, Mitchell. I'll be watching you closely. As Jenkins walked away, Sarah leaned against the wall, fighting back tears of frustration. The warning might soon be the least of her concerns. If Caldwell discovered she was investigating him, who knew what he might do? A man willing to slowly poison a former friend would surely have few qualms about destroying a cleaning lady's career. Later that night, as her shift ended, Sarah was surprised to find Dr. Carter waiting by the employee exit. Sarah, he called, approaching her quickly. I've been thinking about what you said. The thallium theory fits better than anything else we've considered. I'm going to run the tests first thing tomorrow, but I'd like to hear more about your observations. Sarah glanced around nervously. I'm on thin ice already, Doctor. Mrs. Jenkins gave me a warning tonight for speaking to you. Dr. Carter's expression darkened. That's ridiculous. You provided valuable medical insight. From a cleaning lady? Sarah gave a bitter smile. In this hospital, that's not considered valuable. It's considered inappropriate. Well, I disagree, he said firmly. And I'd still like to hear more. Would you be willing to meet me in the cafeteria tomorrow before your shift? Bring any notes you have. Sarah hesitated, weighing the risk against Reynolds' deteriorating condition. All right, she agreed finally. But I have one condition. This stays between us until we have proof. I can't afford to lose this job, Dr. Carter. My daughter depends on me. Call me Ethan, he replied. And you have my word. 4 p.m. tomorrow? Sarah nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. I'll bring everything I have. Sarah arrived at the hospital cafeteria 15 minutes early, nervously clutching her bag containing both her notes and Emily's drawings. She'd spent the morning conducting additional research at the public library, printing scientific articles about thallium poisoning and its treatment. The symptoms matched Reynolds' condition with alarming precision. The cafeteria was in the transitional lull between lunch and dinner, Mostly empty, except for a few nurses ending their shifts and visitors seeking coffee. Sarah chose a corner table with a view of the entrance, her nerves making her hyper-aware of everyone who passed by. Dr. Carter, Ethan, arrived at exactly 4 p.m., carrying his own folder of documents and a tablet. He wore street clothes instead of his usual white coat, dark jeans and a simple blue button-down that made him look younger, less institutional. "Thank you for coming," he said, sliding into the chair across from her. "I ordered the specialized thallium test this morning. Should have results by tomorrow." "That's good," Sarah replied, still glancing around uneasily. "Did you tell anyone else about the test?" "Just the lab marked confidential. I listed it as part of a comprehensive toxicology panel, nothing that would raise flags." He studied her face. "You're really worried about your job, aren't you?" "It's not just the job," Sarah admitted, lowering her voice. "If my suspicions are correct, if someone is deliberately poisoning Mr. Reynolds, then we're dealing with attempted murder. That makes this dangerous." Ethan's expression sobered. "You think it's intentional? Not environmental exposure?" Sarah carefully removed Emily's notebook from her bag and opened it to the drawing of Caldwell with the jar. "My daughter saw his visitor, Derek Caldwell, adding something to the cream when no one was around." She explained Emily's observation about the metallic smell and the subsequent events. "Wait," Ethan interrupted, looking shocked. "Your daughter was there?" "In the hospital room. Sometimes I have to bring her when childcare falls through," Sarah admitted reluctantly. "She stays hidden in my cart. It's not ideal, I know, but—" "Single parent?" Ethan asked, his tone free of judgment. Sarah nodded. "Her father left when I told him I was pregnant. My parents died in an accident 8 years ago, and I had to drop out of MIT to care for my younger siblings. I'm all Emily has, and this night shift premium pays our rent." Ethan absorbed this, then refocused on the notebook. "This drawing is remarkably detailed for a 7-year-old. Emily has a scientific mind," Sarah said with quiet pride. "She notices everything, catalogues it. We do experiments at home, simple chemistry that I can teach her with household items." She hesitated, then added, "That's how I was able to test the cream." She showed him her test results, explaining the rudimentary chemical analysis she'd conducted. With proper lab equipment, we could confirm it definitively, but even these simple tests show abnormal metal content in what should be a basic cosmetic product. Ethan studied her notes with growing amazement. "This is impressive work with minimal resources." He looked up at her. "You would have made an exceptional chemist." "Sarah, I would have tried," she said simply, pushing down the familiar ache of lost opportunities. "Tell me about Reynolds's and Caldwell's relationship," Ethan said, opening his own folder. "I've been researching their history since our conversation." "They were rivals for decades," Sarah explained, recalling articles she'd read. "Competing tech philosophies. Reynolds believes quantum computing should enhance human capabilities, create more connection. Caldwell's vision is more about replacing human systems entirely, artificial intelligence that operates independently of human input. They've been on opposite sides of every tech ethics debate for years. Until last year," Ethan noted, sliding a printout toward her, "when they publicly reconciled at the Boston Tech Summit. According to this, Caldwell's company was struggling after some failed AI initiatives. Reynolds offered an olive branch, a collaborative project that boosted Caldwell's stock price. But Reynolds is still the dominant force," Sarah observed. "And now he's negotiating a massive merger with Tech Fusion that would essentially make him the most powerful figure in quantum computing globally." "A merger Caldwell isn't part of," Ethan added thoughtfully. "If Reynolds were to become incapacitated, what happens to Reynolds Quantum?" "The board would likely delay the merger," Sarah reasoned. "In the uncertainty, stock prices would fall. Someone with inside knowledge could position themselves to acquire controlling interest at a discount. Someone like a former rival, now friend who knows exactly what's happening to Reynolds' health," Ethan concluded grimly. They sat in silence for a moment, the full implications settling between them. "We need proof," Sarah finally said. "Concrete, undeniable evidence that the cream contains thallium and that Caldwell is adding it intentionally." "The thallium test should confirm the first part," Ethan responded. "But proving Caldwell's involvement will be harder. We'd need to catch him in the act or find a pattern that definitively links him to Reynolds' declining health. Sarah hesitated, then pulled out Emily's notebook again. Emily's been tracking everything in her own way. Every time Caldwell visits, every time Reynolds has a downturn. Look at these dates. Ethan examined the childish but methodical record. Crude drawings of a happy face or sad face marked Reynolds' condition, while little jar symbols indicated Caldwell's visits. The pattern was undeniable. Within hours of each visit and new cream application, Reynolds' condition worsened. "This is compelling but still circumstantial," Ethan said reluctantly. "We need to document the cream's contents before and after Caldwell's visits to prove he's adding the thallium." "That would require taking samples without anyone noticing," Sarah pointed out. "And we'd need somewhere to test them properly." Ethan drummed his fingers on the table, thinking, "I have access to the research lab on the 3rd floor. It's minimally staffed on weekends, and I have clearance to run independent analyses for patient care. So we need samples of the cream before and after Caldwell visits," Sarah concluded. "Do we know when he's coming next?" "According to the visitor log, he's been coming every 3rd day. That means he's due tomorrow evening." Ethan hesitated, then added, "There's something else you should know. The hospital board is meeting tomorrow morning to discuss Reynolds' case. Dr. Westfield wants to transfer him to Mayo Clinic as a last resort. If that happens, our window of investigation closes." Sarah felt a surge of urgency. "Then we need to act now. I can take a sample during my shift tonight, before Caldwell arrives tomorrow. And I'll get access to the lab for tomorrow evening," Ethan agreed. "After your shift, meet me there. We'll run the tests on both samples." As they gathered their materials, Ethan suddenly stopped. "Sarah, you understand the risk you're taking? If we're wrong or if we can't prove it conclusively?" "I understand," she said quietly, "but I also know what I saw. What Emily saw. And I can't just watch a man die when I might be able to prevent it." Ethan nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think you're showing more courage and integrity than most people with far more security and influence." "It's not about courage," Sarah replied. "Thinking of Emily. It's about showing my daughter that the truth matters, that standing by while someone suffers isn't acceptable, no matter who you are." That night, Sarah performed her duties with heightened awareness, carefully collecting a small sample of the cream when Reynolds' room was momentarily empty. She labeled it and sealed it in a sterile container Ethan had provided, then hid it in her locker before continuing her rounds. Near the end of her shift, as she cleaned the nurse's station, she overheard 2 doctors discussing Reynolds. "Westfield's pushing for the transfer to Mayo," one said quietly. "Says we're missing something fundamental." "Caldwell's arguing against it," the other replied. "Says the travel would be too stressful in Reynolds' condition. He's been remarkably involved for someone who's just a friend." "Well, he did make a substantial donation to the neurology wing last week," the first doctor commented. "Westfield's been treating him like royalty ever since." Sarah kept her expression neutral, but internally her suspicions crystallized further. Caldwell was ingratiating himself with the hospital administration while simultaneously ensuring Reynolds remained under his influence. The next morning, Sarah dropped Emily at school with an extra tight hug. "Is everything okay, Mummy?" Emily asked, her perceptive eyes studying Sarah's face. "Everything's fine, sweetheart," Sarah assured her. "I just might be a little late picking you up today. Mrs. Perez will get you after school." "Are you helping the sick man with the penny smell?" Emily asked innocently. Sarah hesitated, then knelt to her daughter's level. "Emily, do you remember our talks about doing the right thing, even when it's hard?" Emily nodded solemnly. "That's what I'm trying to do," Sarah explained. "Sometimes grown-ups see problems they have to try to fix, even if it's scary. Like when you fixed Mr. Wilson's car when nobody believed it was making the funny noise," Emily asked. Sarah smiled at the simple comparison. "Something like that, yes." Emily considered this, then opened her backpack and pulled out her science notebook. "Take this. It has all my observations. For evidence." The gesture nearly brought tears to Sarah's eyes. "Thank you, scientist. That might be exactly what we need." As Emily headed inside, Sarah clutched the notebook, steeling herself for the challenge ahead. Tonight, everything would come to a head, one way or another. They would either expose the truth or lose their chance entirely. What she didn't notice was the black sedan parked half a block from the school, its tinted windows concealing Derek Caldwell as he watched the interaction with calculating interest. Sarah arrived for her evening shift with a knot of tension in her stomach. The hospital corridors seemed charged with an unusual energy, nurses moving more quickly, doctors conferring in hushed tones, security personnel positioned at strategic intervals throughout the VIP wing. "What's happening?" she asked a familiar nurse as she signed in. "Emergency board meeting ran long," the nurse replied, glancing around. "Something about Mr. Reynolds' care plan. Dr. Westfield and Mr. Caldwell got into it pretty intensely from what I heard." Sarah's pulse quickened. "Caldwell was at the board meeting?" "Oh yeah. He's been throwing his weight around all day. Made some speech about Reynolds' wishes to remain here in Boston." The nurse lowered her voice. "Between us, Westfield looked furious when they finally adjourned. But Caldwell got his way. Transfer to Mayo is off the table for now." This confirmed what Sarah and Ethan had suspected. Caldwell was actively working to keep Reynolds under his influence. With the transfer cancelled, their investigation became even more crucial. As Sarah wheeled her cart toward the employee locker room, Mrs. Jenkins intercepted her. "Mitchell, a moment." Sarah stopped, forcing herself to appear calm despite her internal panic. Had Jenkins discovered the missing cream sample? Did she somehow know about the planned meeting with Ethan? "Your shift assignment has changed," Jenkins announced, consulting her clipboard. "You'll be covering the East Wing tonight. Rodriguez will handle the VIP section." Sarah's carefully maintained composure slipped. "But I've been assigned to the VIP wing for months. I know the protocols." "Are you questioning management decisions?" Jenkins' eyebrows rose dangerously. "No, I just—" Sarah scrambled for a plausible objection. "Mr. Reynolds is particular about his room arrangement. He's become accustomed to my cleaning routine." "Mr. Reynolds is barely conscious, Mitchell. I doubt he's critiquing housekeeping methods." Jenkins' tone was dismissive. "This reassignment comes directly from administration. Mr. Caldwell specifically requested our most experienced staff for the VIP wing tonight. Rodriguez has seniority." The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. Had Caldwell noticed her observations, suspected her involvement, or was this simply bad timing? "Is there a problem, Mitchell?" Jenkins asked, noting her distress. Sarah quickly composed herself. "No problem. I'll head to the East Wing right away. See that you do." "And Mitchell," Jenkins added, her voice suddenly less hostile, "your performance has been adequate recently. Keep it that way, and I may reconsider the warning in your file." The unexpected near compliment barely registered through Sarah's rising panic. She needed to alert Ethan about the change in plans and somehow gain access to the VIP wing to collect the second sample after Caldwell's visit. Without that comparative evidence, they'd have nothing conclusive. In the locker room, Sarah quickly texted Ethan from her old flip phone. "Assignment changed. No access to VIP wing. Caldwell requested staffing change. Suspicious." His reply came minutes later. "Meet in cafeteria now. Urgent development." Sarah found Ethan at the same corner table they'd occupied the previous day, his expression troubled. "The thallium test came back positive," he said without preamble as she sat down. "Significant levels in Reynolds' blood. I've documented everything but haven't reported it officially yet." "That confirms our theory," Sarah said, feeling a mixture of validation and dread. "But we still need to prove Caldwell is the source, and now I can't access the room to get the post-visit sample." "That's not all," Ethan continued, lowering his voice. "Reynolds had another episode this morning, severe arrhythmia. The cardiologist believes he may have only days left if we can't identify and remove the source of poisoning." Sarah's mind raced. "We need to get that sample tonight after Caldwell visits. It's our only chance to prove he's adding the thallium." "How?" "You're reassigned, and Caldwell specifically requested Rodriguez for the VIP wing." Ethan's frustration was evident. "Wait," Sarah said, an idea forming. "Does Rodriguez know about any of this?" "Maria, no, we've kept this between us." "She and I are friendly," Sarah explained, hope rising. "She's covered shifts for me before when Emily was sick. Maybe she'd let me take her place for an hour, long enough to get the sample after Caldwell leaves. It's risky," Ethan warned. "If Jenkins finds out—" "It's all risky at this point," Sarah pointed out, "but we're running out of time and options." They quickly formed a plan. Sarah would approach Rodriguez about swapping shifts briefly after Caldwell's scheduled 8 p.m. visit. Ethan would prepare the lab for immediate testing when she obtained the sample. They would meet at 10 p.m. to analyze both samples side by side. "There's one more thing," Ethan said hesitantly. "I've been reviewing Reynolds' complete medical history. The cognitive decline Caldwell mentioned to your daughter, it's not supported by any medical evidence. Reynolds' neurological function was completely normal before this illness began. Caldwell's statement was either a mistake or—" "A justification," Sarah finished grimly, her way to rationalize what he's doing. As they parted, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility pressing down. Everything hinged on tonight's evidence. Finding Rodriguez proved easier than expected. The veteran cleaning lady was taking a break in the staff room, her feet propped up on a chair. "Sarah, heard Jenkins reassigned you," she greeted. "That woman changes her mind more than I change my mop water." "Actually, that's what I wanted to talk about," Sarah began carefully. "I need a huge favor." She explained that Emily had left a special drawing for Mr. Reynolds, a get-well card she'd worked hard on, and Sarah had promised to deliver it tonight. "I know it sounds silly," she concluded, "but it would mean the world to my daughter. Could we swap sections for just half an hour tonight, around 8:30? Rodriguez studied her thoughtfully. Jenkins would have a fit if she found out. "She won't. I'll be in and out before anyone notices," Sarah promised. "Please, Maria, Emily will be crushed if her drawing doesn't get delivered." Rodriguez sighed, then smiled. "All right, meet me by the service elevator at 8:30. You'll have exactly 30 minutes before I need to start the final rounds." "Thank you," Sarah said with genuine gratitude. "I owe you one." "Just make sure that little girl of yours knows her art is appreciated," Rodriguez replied warmly. With the first hurdle cleared, Sarah went through the motions of her shift in the East Wing, cleaning methodically while her mind remained focused on the plan ahead. At 8:25, she made her way to the service elevator, constantly checking for any sign of Mrs. Jenkins. Rodriguez arrived precisely at 8:30. "Coast is clear. Caldwell just left about 5 minutes ago. Seemed in quite a hurry. Didn't even stop at the nurse's station like he usually does." "Perfect timing," Sarah said, accepting Rodriguez's keycard. "I'll be back before 9. Take your time. Jenkins is in a budget meeting until 9:30. Just don't get caught." Sarah made her way swiftly but casually to the VIP wing, nodding to the security guard who recognized her from her regular shifts. Inside Reynolds's room, the tech magnate was sleeping fitfully, his breathing labored. The jar of cream sat on the nightstand, the lid slightly askew, recently used. Working quickly, Sarah took a sample using the sterile container Ethan had provided, carefully replacing the lid exactly as she'd found it. As she sealed the sample, Reynolds stirred. "Who's there?" he murmured, his voice barely audible. Sarah froze, then moved closer. "It's just me, Mr. Reynolds, Sarah from the cleaning staff." His eyes opened partially, unfocused but seeking her face. Sarah, the observant one, with the scientific mind. She was surprised he remembered their brief exchange. "Yes, that's me." "Something's wrong," he whispered. "Getting worse after he visits." Sarah's heart raced. Reynolds himself had noticed the pattern. "Mr. Reynolds, do you remember when you started using the cream Mr. Caldwell brings you?" "Derek's cream," Reynolds murmured, his voice fading. "For the pain. Started after I refused to delay the merger. Said I was too stubborn." His eyes closed again. "Laura would have seen it. She always saw through him." Sarah gently touched his hand. "Mr. Reynolds, we're trying to help you. Dr. Carter and we're investigating the cream. We think it might be making you sick." Reynolds's fingers weakly curled around hers. "Smart, both of you. Trusted the wrong person." His breathing slowed as he drifted back to sleep, but his last whispered words were clear. "Evidence. Need evidence." With the sample secure in her pocket, Sarah quickly finished the routine cleaning. tasks Rodriguez would have performed, then headed for the door, only to find Derek Caldwell standing in the doorway, watching her with cold calculation. "You're not the usual cleaning person," he observed, his voice smooth but his eyes sharp. "I specifically requested Ms. Rodriguez tonight." Sarah's mouth went dry, but she maintained her composure. "She needed to handle an emergency in the East Wing. I'm covering temporarily." Caldwell stepped fully into the room, closing the distance between them with deliberate steps. "Interesting. I've noticed you before, you know. Always here during my visits. Always watching." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "Just doing my job, sir." "I doubt that," he replied, his gaze drifting to the nightstand where the cream jar sat. "People like us recognize ambition in others. You're not just anything, are you, Ms.?" "Mitchell," she supplied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Sarah Mitchell." "Mitchell," he repeated as though committing it to memory. "Tell me, Ms. Mitchell, do you enjoy working here? Cleaning up after others, it seems, beneath someone with your obvious intelligence." The question was a trap, designed to reveal how much she might know or suspect. Sarah chose her words carefully. "It pays the bills, and everyone deserves dignity regardless of their job." Caldwell smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Dignity, yes, Max was always preoccupied with dignity. Human dignity in the face of advancing technology. It's becoming an outdated concept, don't you think? Like privacy or truth. Sarah remained silent, unwilling to engage with his philosophical bait. The sample felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. "Well," Caldwell finally said, breaking the tense silence, "don't let me keep you from your temporary duties. I just realized I forgot to tell Max something important about our project. A moment of privacy, if you don't mind." Sarah had no choice but to leave. In the hallway, she glanced at her watch. 8:55. She needed to return the key card to Rodriguez and then meet Ethan at the lab. But something about Caldwell's unexpected return troubled her deeply. What had he forgotten to tell Reynolds? Or was he checking on something else entirely? She hesitated outside the door, torn between her immediate plan and a growing sense of danger. Through the small window in the door, she could see Caldwell standing over Reynolds, speaking in his ear, although the older man appeared still unconscious. Then, with a quick glance toward the door, Caldwell reached into his jacket pocket and removed a small vial. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she watched Caldwell unscrew the jar of cream, add several drops from the vial, and stir the mixture thoroughly with a small glass rod he produced from another pocket. The deliberate precision of his movements left no doubt. This was not his first time performing this ritual. She fumbled for her phone, hands shaking, as she attempted to record video through the small window. The angle was poor, the image blurry, but it might be enough to show what was happening. As Caldwell finished and replaced the jar on the nightstand, Sarah quickly retreated down the hall before he could catch her watching. At the service elevator, she returned the key card to Rodriguez with a hasty thanks, her mind racing with the implications of what she'd just witnessed. The partial video, combined with their samples and Reynolds' blood tests, might be enough evidence to take to hospital administration or even the police. She hurried to meet Ethan at the research lab, slipping inside the card access door he held open. The lab was deserted at this hour, the overhead lights dimmed except for the workspace Ethan had prepared. "You got it?" he asked immediately, noting her agitated state. "Yes, and more." Sarah placed the sample on the counter and pulled out her phone. "I caught Caldwell on video adding something to the cream. He came back after his initial visit. I think he was suspicious about the room assignment change." Ethan's expression darkened as he watched the blurry footage. "It's not perfectly clear what he's doing, but combined with our other evidence, there's something else," Sarah added, recounting her brief conversation with Reynolds. "He's aware something's wrong. He mentioned declining after Caldwell's visits and said something about refusing to delay the merger." "So our theory about Caldwell's motive is looking more solid," Ethan noted grimly. "Let's test these samples immediately." Working together, they prepared both cream samples for analysis. Ethan operated the lab's mass spectrometer, while Sarah documented each step methodically. The first sample, taken before Caldwell's visit, showed trace amounts of thallium concerning but potentially explainable as contamination. The second sample, however, revealed levels nearly 20 times higher. "This is definitive," Ethan said, staring at the results. "The concentration in the second sample is high enough to cause severe poisoning through dermal absorption. Repeated applications would build up toxic levels in the system over time, exactly what we're seeing in Reynolds. Slow enough to avoid suspicion," Sarah noted. "Gradual enough to mimic a mysterious illness rather than acute poisoning." "We need to take this to Dr. Westfield immediately," Ethan decided, gathering the printouts. "With these results and your video, there's enough evidence to remove the cream at minimum and potentially involve law enforcement." "Wait," Sarah cautioned. "Caldwell has been cultivating influence with the hospital administration. What if Westfield doesn't believe us? Or worse, what if he alerts Caldwell before any action is taken?" Ethan considered this. "You're right to be cautious. We should create copies of everything first and secure the evidence. But Reynolds is running out of time. He needs the appropriate treatment for thallium poisoning immediately." "What about Dr. Lowell?" Sarah suggested. "She's the toxicology specialist, right? And she has no connection to Caldwell that we know of." "Good thinking," Ethan agreed. "I'll call her now." While Ethan stepped aside to make the call, Sarah carefully labeled and packaged their samples and test results. Emily's notebook lay open beside her, its childlike observations now serving as a crucial timeline of the poisoning. Sarah felt a surge of pride mingled with anxiety. Her daughter's scientific curiosity might help save a man's life, but she'd also inadvertently involved her in something dangerous. "Dr. Lowell is coming," Ethan announced, returning to the lab bench. "She's bringing the hospital's chief of security, someone she trusts completely. They'll be here in 15 minutes. Sarah nodded, relieved yet still uneasy. "What do we do until then?" "Complete our documentation and prepare a concise briefing," Ethan replied, his doctor's training evident in his methodical approach. "We need to present everything clearly and irrefutably." As they worked side by side, organizing their evidence, Sarah was struck by how naturally they functioned as a team, her chemistry background complementing his medical expertise. In another life, another reality, this could have been her daily work rather than a dangerous exception to her cleaning routine. Dr. Lowell arrived precisely when promised, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, accompanied by a tall man in a security uniform, Chief Edwards, according to his badge. "Dr. Carter," Lowell acknowledged briskly. "And Ms. Mitchell, I presume?" At Sarah's nod, she continued, "I understand you've made a serious discovery regarding Mr. Reynolds' condition." "Yes, Doctor," Ethan responded, taking the lead. "We have evidence that Mr. Reynolds is being systematically poisoned with thallium, administered through a topical cream provided by his associate, Derek Caldwell." Methodically, they presented their findings, the blood tests, the comparative cream samples, the mass spectrometry results, Sarah's phone video, Emily's observational notebook, and Reynolds' own comments about declining after visits. Dr. Lowell's expression remained impassive as she examined each piece of evidence, but Chief Edwards let out a low whistle when he saw the spectrometry readings. "These levels are unmistakable," Lowell finally said, "and the pattern is consistent with intentional poisoning." She turned to Edwards. "This requires immediate action on multiple fronts." The security chief nodded grimly. "Cal contact Boston PD. This is attempted murder, plain and simple." "First priority is patient care," Lowell stated firmly. "Reynolds needs Prussian blue therapy. Started immediately to bind and remove the thallium. I'll handle that personally." She looked at Sarah with newfound respect. "Your background in chemistry proved invaluable, Miss Mitchell. Though I must ask, how did a former MIT chemistry student end up working hospital maintenance?" "Life took an unexpected turn," Sarah replied simply. "Family responsibilities." Lowell nodded thoughtfully. "Well, your scientific instincts remain sharp. Few would have connected these dots even with medical training." As they finalized their action plan, the lab door swung open abruptly. Sarah's heart sank as Mrs. Jenkins entered, her face a mask of fury. "Mitchell, I've been looking everywhere for you," she snapped. "Rodriguez admitted you traded assignments without authorization. This is grounds for immediate termination." She stopped short, finally registering the presence of Dr. Lowell and Chief Edwards. "What is going on here?" "Your cleaning staff member has potentially saved Mr. Reynolds' life," Dr. Lowell stated coldly, "while exposing a serious crime in the process." Jenkins blinked in confusion. "I don't understand." "You will," Edwards assured her. For now I suggest you assist, rather than hinder our efforts. As the reality of the situation dawned on Jenkins, her expression shifted from anger to disbelief. Mitchell discovered this, but she's just a highly trained chemist who happened to be working as a cleaner, Ethan interrupted sharply, and who observed what an entire medical team missed. Jenkins fell silent, visibly processing this revelation. We need to move quickly, Lowell announced. Edwards will secure Reynolds's room and remove all personal care products. I'll begin treatment immediately. Dr. Carter, please compile a complete medical brief on thallium poisoning for the attending physicians. Ms. Mitchell, we'll need your formal statement for both hospital records and police. What about Caldwell? Sarah asked, the immediate concern for Emily rising in her mind. He's already suspicious of me. If he realizes we're onto him before the police arrive, Edward's expression hardened. I'll post security outside Reynolds' room immediately and contact Boston PD for an emergency response. Where is Caldwell now? He left the hospital after his second visit, Sarah replied. Around 9 p.m. Stay here in the lab until we confirm he's in custody, Edwards instructed. It's secure and requires card access. The next hours passed in a blur of activity. Sarah provided her statement, while Dr. Lowell initiated emergency treatment for Reynolds. Hospital security footage was retrieved, confirming Sarah's observations of Caldwell's repeated pattern of tampering with the cream. Boston police arrived and secured the evidence chain, taking formal statements from everyone involved. Near midnight, Chief Edwards returned to the lab where Sarah was waiting with Ethan. Boston PD just took Caldwell into custody at his hotel, he reported. They found thallium compounds in his possession, along with notes detailing dosages and expected physiological responses. He's being charged with attempted murder. Relief washed over Sarah. And Mr. Reynolds? Responding well to initial treatment, Edwards replied. Dr. Lowell says you identified the poisoning just in time. Another day or two might have been too late for full recovery. As the adrenaline of the night finally began to subside, Sarah checked her phone. 3 missed calls from Mrs. Perez. With a jolt, she realized how late it was. Emily, I need to get home to my daughter, she said urgently. I'll drive you, Ethan offered immediately. It's not safe for you to take public transportation this late. As they prepared to leave, Dr. Lowell approached with an unexpected update. Mr. Reynolds regained consciousness briefly during treatment, she informed them. When I explained what had happened and who had discovered the poisoning, he asked for the cleaning lady with the scientific mind to be present at tomorrow's case review. His exact words were, I want to meet the woman who saw what everyone else missed. Sarah was stunned. Me at a formal medical review. Not just that, Lowell added with the first hint of a smile. He's requested that you bring your daughter as well. He seems quite interested in meeting the young scientist who first noticed the penny smell. In the car driving to Sarah's apartment, the events of the night seemed almost surreal. I still can't believe it worked, she murmured. That anyone believed us. Evidence speaks for itself, Ethan replied simply. You gathered it methodically and presented it clearly, exactly as any good scientist would. I haven't been a scientist for 8 years, Sarah said softly. Just a mother trying to make ends meet. Ethan glanced at her briefly before returning his eyes to the road. I disagree. Science isn't just a job. It's a way of thinking, observing, testing. You never stopped being a scientist, Sarah. You just applied those skills in different circumstances. As they pulled up to her modest apartment building, Sarah saw Mrs. Perez peering anxiously through the ground floor window. Thank you, she said, turning to Ethan, for believing me, for helping. I'll pick you both up tomorrow at 10 for the case review, he replied. Try to get some rest. The hard part is over. But as Sarah climbed the stairs to her apartment, where Emily would be waiting with worried questions, she wasn't entirely sure that was true. The hard part, explaining to her 7-year-old how her innocent observations had uncovered a crime, facing hospital administration and police interviews, perhaps even media attention, might just be beginning. 3 weeks later, Sarah stood before the mirror in her apartment, barely recognizing her reflection. The navy blue dress, the first new clothing she'd purchased in years, fit perfectly. Its simple elegance a stark contrast to her usual practical uniform. Beside her, Emily twirled in a new yellow sundress, her excitement palpable. "Do I look like a real scientist, Mom?" she asked, adjusting the small microscope pin Sarah had given her that morning, a gift from Ethan to commemorate Emily's first scientific discovery. "The most brilliant scientist I know," Sarah assured her, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Ready for the big meeting?" Emily nodded solemnly. "Mr. Reynolds wants to thank us for figuring out the penny smell mystery. Dr. Ethan explained it to me. The bad man was putting metal in the cream to make Mr. Reynolds sick." Sarah had struggled with how to explain the situation to Emily, wanting to honor her daughter's role without burdening her with the darker aspects. Ethan had helped, using age-appropriate scientific explanations that focused on the detective work rather than the malice behind it. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Reynolds had responded remarkably well to the thallium treatment, his condition improving daily once the poisoning was addressed. Caldwell remained in custody, denied bail due to both the severity of the charges and evidence discovered in his hotel room detailing plans to gain control of Reynolds' quantum through what he chillingly termed technological natural selection. The hospital had been thrown into turmoil by the case. Dr. Westfield initially attempted to minimize Sarah's role, suggesting in early press statements that the medical team's diligent investigation led to the diagnosis. This narrative quickly collapsed when Dr. Lowell and Ethan refused to participate in what Lowell bluntly called revisionist face-saving. Sarah had expected to lose her job in the aftermath, regardless of her role in exposing the crime. Instead, to her surprise, she'd been placed on paid administrative leave, pending review of your contribution, according to the awkwardly formal letter from Human Resources. A knock at the door announced Ethan's arrival. Like Sarah, he was dressed more formally than usual, in a charcoal suit and blue tie. "The car service is waiting downstairs," he said, smiling at Emily's excited greeting. Reynolds insisted on sending it. Said it was the least he could do. The sleek black car delivered them not to the hospital, but to Reynolds' Quantum headquarters in downtown Boston, a gleaming glass tower with the company's distinctive spiral logo emblazoned across the entrance. Inside the lobby, a security officer greeted them by name. "Mr. Reynolds is expecting you on the executive floor," he said, escorting them to a private elevator. "He's been looking forward to this meeting all week." The executive floor was surprisingly warm and inviting, modern in design but with comfortable seating areas, plants and abstract art that created a thoughtful atmosphere rather than a sterile corporate one. Maxwell Reynolds awaited them in a sunlit conference room. Though still thinner than his pre-poisoning photos, he looked remarkably recovered. Alert, his color returned, standing without assistance. Beside him stood an elegant older woman, whom Sarah recognized as Laura Reynolds, his wife and the company's chief operations officer. "At last," Reynolds said warmly, extending his hand first to Sarah, then kneeling slightly to shake Emily's hand with equal seriousness. "The scientific minds behind the mystery. Please sit. We have much to discuss." Over the next hour, Reynolds expressed his profound gratitude, listening intently as Sarah and Ethan recounted the full investigation process. Emily proudly showed him her notebook, which he examined with genuine interest. "Remarkable observational skills," he commented, turning the pages carefully. "The pattern is clear when properly documented. You have a natural talent for scientific method, young lady." Emily beamed at the praise. "Mom taught me. She does experiments with me at home because she couldn't finish becoming a scientist." Reynolds raised an eyebrow, looking to Sarah. "Couldn't finish?" "MIT chemistry program," Sarah explained briefly. "Family circumstances intervened." Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. "Dr. Carter mentioned something about that. 3 semesters short of graduation, I believe." "Yes," Sarah confirmed, wondering why this detail seemed important to him. "Well," Reynolds said, exchanging glances with his wife, "that brings us to the purpose of today's meeting. Laura and I have been discussing an appropriate way to express our gratitude, not just for saving my life, which is invaluable, but for the reminder of something I've long advocated in our company philosophy." "Which is?" Ethan asked. "That brilliance exists everywhere, not just in prestigious institutions or expected places," Reynolds replied. "That observation and innovation can come from anyone given the proper opportunity." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. Ms. Mitchell, Sarah, your actions exemplify precisely the principles I've built this company upon. Human potential enhanced by opportunity, not replaced or overlooked. Laura Reynolds spoke for the first time, her voice warm but businesslike. We'd like to offer you a position with Reynolds Quantum, Sarah. A role in our newly established toxicology research division. The position would include funding to complete your degree requirements at MIT, with a flexible schedule to accommodate your parental responsibilities. Sarah sat stunned, the offer beyond anything she had imagined. I don't know what to say. There's more, Reynolds continued. We're establishing an educational foundation for individuals whose academic journeys were interrupted by family obligations or financial hardship. The first initiative will be a scholarship program for parents returning to STEM fields, and, Laura added with a smile directed at Emily, a companion program called Young Observers for children showing scientific aptitude. Weekend workshops, summer programs, mentorship opportunities. We'd like to name it after you both, Reynolds said quietly. The Mitchell Initiative, if you're comfortable with that. Sarah felt tears welling in her eyes. That's incredibly generous. It's incredibly necessary, Reynolds corrected gently. Talent is being wasted every day because opportunity isn't evenly distributed. Your story highlighted that reality in the most personal way. Possible. Emily tugged at Sarah's sleeve. Does this mean you can be a scientist again, Mom? For real? The question crystallized the moment. Sarah looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Ethan's encouraging smile, and finally at the Reynolds, who waited patiently for her response. Yes, she answered firmly. I think it does. Reynolds nodded, satisfied. Excellent. Dr. Carter has already agreed to serve on the initiative's advisory board, contributing his medical expertise while maintaining his hospital position. His eyes twinkled. Though I suspect his interest isn't purely professional. Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks as Ethan cleared his throat awkwardly. Your meeting concluded with practical details. Sarah would begin part-time while completing her degree requirements, with Emily enrolled in the company's on-site childcare program. The foundation would launch in 6 months, giving Sarah time to adjust to her new role before becoming more publicly involved as its namesake and first success story. As they prepared to leave, Reynolds held back, asking Sarah for a private word. There's something else you should know, he said once they were alone. The hospital board contacted me, seeking guidance on how to handle the public relations aspect of this situation. They were particularly concerned about the fact that a member of the cleaning staff had essentially upstaged their entire medical team. Sarah sighed. I expected something like that. Their initial proposal was to minimize your role or present it as a collaborative effort led by the medical staff, Reynolds confirmed. I refused to cooperate with any narrative that diminished your contribution. In fact, I made it clear that any attempt to do so would result in my very public objection. Thank you, Sarah said simply. Don't thank me yet, Reynolds replied with a hint of mischief. I may have also suggested that their staffing practices and hierarchical culture warranted review, and that Mrs. Jenkins might benefit from sensitivity training. Sarah couldn't help laughing at the image. She's not all bad, you know. Just rigid, perhaps. But I understand she's been remarkably accommodating since the board's emergency meeting about the incident. Reynolds smiled. Sometimes systems need disruption to evolve. Outside the building, Ethan waited with Emily, who was proudly explaining her microscope pin to a security guard. Ready for the next step? He asked as Sarah joined them. I think so, she replied, taking Emily's hand. It's a lot to process. One day at a time, Ethan suggested. Speaking of which, would you two like to get ice cream? There's an excellent place near the public garden. Ice cream, Emily cheered. Decision made. As they walked through the bustling downtown streets toward the garden, Sarah found herself experiencing a strange, new feeling. Possibility. For years, her horizons had been defined by necessity and limitation. Now, unexpectedly, doors were opening. I've been thinking, Ethan said casually as they strolled, Emily skipping ahead within sight. The Mitchell Initiative will need educational programming, science activities designed for different age groups. Your home experiments with Emily are exactly the kind of approach we'd want to develop. Sarah smiled. Are you offering me another job already? I haven't even started the first one. Not a job, he clarified. A collaboration, I have the medical background. You have the chemistry expertise and the gift for making complex concepts accessible to children. Together we could create something remarkable. Together, Sarah repeated, testing the word. After years of shouldering every burden alone, the concept felt both foreign and surprisingly right. I'd like that. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the newly renovated Reynolds Quantum Foundation space, watching as Emily demonstrated a color-changing chemical reaction to a group of wide-eyed children, the first participants in the Young Observers program. Behind the children, parents from the Adult Education Initiative observed, taking notes for their own studies. On the wall behind them hung a simple metal plaque. To the minds that see what credentials cannot teach. Sarah felt a presence beside her and turned to find Mrs. Jenkins, now enrolled in the Adult Education program herself after an unexpected career change. Never properly apologized, the former supervisor said quietly. For not seeing you clearly. We all miss things sometimes, Sarah replied. The important part is being willing to look again. Across the room, Ethan caught her eye and smiled warmly. Their collaboration had evolved beyond educational programming, blossoming into a relationship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Next week, he would join them for their traditional Sunday experiments, now conducted in Sarah's new apartment with proper safety equipment and a real microscope for Emily. Reynolds himself occasionally visited the foundation, fully recovered and more committed than ever to his vision of technology enhancing human potential rather than replacing it. The merger with TechFusion had proceeded, creating the largest human-centered quantum computing entity in the world. In interviews, he often credited his brush with disaster for clarifying his company's philosophical direction. As the demonstration concluded, Emily rushed over, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom, did you see? Everyone's experiment changed color just like we practiced." "I saw, scientist," Sarah affirmed, embracing her daughter. "You're an excellent teacher." "Dr. Ethan said maybe next month I can show them the electricity experiment," Emily continued enthusiastically. "And he said soon we can visit your new laboratory at MIT. "That's right," Sarah confirmed. Her degree completion program was progressing well, with graduation now just months away instead of a distant dream. Later that evening, as Emily prepared for bed in their new home, she paused thoughtfully. "Mom, remember when you said grown-ups sometimes have to fix problems even when it's scary?" "I remember," Sarah replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "I think that's what scientists really do," Emily concluded. "They see problems no one else notices, and they're brave enough to fix them." She hugged her notebook to her chest, the original one now preserved in a protective cover. "I'm going to be that kind of scientist someday." "You already are, sweetheart," Sarah assured her, thinking of the metallic penny smell that had started it all. The very best kind. As Emily drifted off to sleep, Sarah stood by the window looking out at the Boston skyline. So much had changed in half a year, not just her circumstances, but her sense of herself. The scientist she had been and the mother she had become were not separate identities after all, but integral parts of a whole person. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Results from today's session look promising. Children's understanding of basic chemical reactions significantly improved. Data supports our approach. Also, dinner tomorrow? Sarah smiled and typed back, "Data requires further investigation." Dinner confirmed. The scientific method at work, she thought. Observation, hypothesis, experimentation, conclusion. It had solved a mystery, saved a life, and unexpectedly opened a new chapter in her own story. One she was now writing not from necessity, but from choice. Emily's notebook lay open on the desk, her childish handwriting capturing the essence of everything that had transpired. See, write, test. It was how everything had begun, and it was how everything would continue.